In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this gorgeous absolute beginner scarf. This is if you've never knitted before, or maybe you just want a relaxing project or need to refresh your skills a bit. So come hang out with me and let's knit a gorgeous scarf. Our finished scarf measures about 8.5 inches wide and about 68 inches long. However, you can customize this as wide and as long as you want it to be. It's totally up to you. So let's jump in and get started. For this project, you're going to need a pair of scissors, a tapestry or yarn needle. It's just a large needle. Make sure the eye of your needle is large enough to fit the thick yarn. You'll need a tape measure, and that's just to measure the scarf to make sure it's as big as you want it to be. You can also test that by just throwing it around your neck and seeing if it's as long as you want to. But the tape measure is helpful. For our knitting needles, we're going to be using some US 15s. These are 10 millimeter knitting needles, and just straight needles are fine for this project. Now let's talk about this pretty yarn. I have a yarn cake here, and I wanted to make a scarf that was super easy, beginner friendly, and I picked this self-striping yarn cake so that this cake does all the color work for you. You don't have to change colors or anything. It just does it all for you. This is called Caron Chunky Cakes by Yarnspirations. And as you can see, it's bright and it's fun and it's happy. And it's also a thick strand so that you can knit it up pretty quickly, okay? Now each cake of this is 297 yards, 271 meters, 9.8 ounces, 280 grams, okay? So one of these yarn cakes will make you a scarf, okay? And then for the color, this is called Rainbow Jellies, and it's really fun and rainbowy. Now, if you need to substitute yarn, if you can't find this yarn or you want to use something on your own, just look for, on the back of your yarn label, there is a yarn ball with a number in the middle. This is a number 6 super bulky yarn. And this actually recommends a US 11 needle or an 8 millimeter needle. We're going to go up a little bit just to give it a little bit more drape, and so it won't be so stiff, okay? So we are going to go up a needle size or two, but just look for a super bulky 6 yarn on the yarn weight scale and you'll be just fine with that, okay? So let's get started. Okay, so I pulled some yarn out of the middle here, and we're going to begin by doing the long tail cast on to put the stitches onto our needle. Now I have a whole separate video on the long tail cast on. If you've never done that before, check that video out too. It's super helpful. So what we want to do is, for the long tail cast on, you want to estimate the amount of yarn that you'll need. I like to do like a wingspan, and that's just stretching the yarn out as far as your arms will go, and that is more than enough yarn that you'll need for this, okay? So just like about 2 arms length of this, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to put a slip knot on our needle, and that's going to be our very first stitch, okay? So what we're going to do is wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop like that. Bring the yarn behind the loop. Then we're going to take our needle, reach in and pull that loop up just like that, and just kind of tighten it onto your needle. You don't need to do it super tight because you want to be able to work into these stitches later, okay? So just kind of tighten it on there. Okay, we're going to cast on a total of 20 stitches onto our needle. This is the first one, and I'm going to show you how to do the rest. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold the needle in our right hand. Then we're going to take our index finger and our thumb, and we're going to see how the strand of yarn, we have one strand going away from us towards, this is the one connected to the yarn ball. So it's going towards the yarn ball. And then we have our tail that we're going to deal with later. But the tail is coming towards us, okay? So take your index finger and your thumb, and you're going to come up underneath of it like that. See how it's like an A almost, or an upside down V? We're going to come in underneath of it like that with our index finger and our thumb. Grab the bottom with your pinky, and now take your fingers and open it up. Now see how we have like a diamond shape? That's going to help us, okay, kind of open it up and see. So take your needle, and we're going to cast on our first stitch. So you're going to go up under your thumb, around your index finger, and pick up that loop, and then we're going to go through our thumb loop. See how I picked up that loop like that? And then you can sort of let go. Don't let go with your pinky down here, but like kind of let go there, and then we're tightening. And that's our first stitch. Actually, it's our second stitch because we already put one on with our slip stitch, but it's the first stitch we've cast on using this technique, okay? So you can put your fingers back in, open up that diamond shape, and we're going to go around the thumb, around the finger, pick it up, and come through that thumb loop and tighten, okay? Let's do a few more of these extra slow, okay? We have our diamond shape, around, around, and through, and tighten. Around, around, through, and tighten. Around, around, through, and tighten. Around, around, through, and tighten. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We need 20 though, okay? So let's do 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, pushing things back if you need to, 18, 19, and 20. So what I like to do before I continue is to just count one more time. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So now we've cast on our stitches and we're ready to start knitting. As you can see, we have our tail. If your tail is really, really long and kind of in your way, you can go ahead and just give it a little snip, okay? You don't want to cut it too short because we will need to weave it in later, but if it's kind of in the way, you can snip it. All right, now we want to grab our second needle and we're going to pull a little bit more yarn out of our yarn cake. This is our first color, so it's going to start changing soon, and that's really exciting. Okay, so we're going to just kind of get this tail out of the way. We'll deal with that later. Now, this is yarn that's connected to our yarn cake. This is called the working yarn, just as a side note. And so what we want to do is we're going to do our knit. We're going to just knit all the stitches of every row, okay? It's super easy, very beginner friendly. All right, so what we want to do if you've never knitted before is we're going to take our needle. If you notice, the work is in my left hand on the left needle, and my empty needle is on the right, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take our needle and we're going to come up under, we're going to insert it into that first stitch, come up under the needle, okay? Let me just show you what it looks like from the top view. See how it's in both of those? Then we're going to take our yarn. Now, as you knit more and more, you'll kind of figure out how you like to hold your yarn best. For me, I like to hook it on my pinky and kind of hold it like this, but it's up to you. Some people like to hold it like this and knit that way. Some people hold it completely different. So try a couple different ways of holding yarn, and whatever feels best to you is perfect for you, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're going to, now that we've inserted our needle, we're gonna wrap the yarn around that bottom needle only, and then we're gonna take this needle and we're gonna bring it through, catching that loop. See how I'm catching that loop right there? Push it through, and then we're going to push it off that bottom needle, okay? Now, when you're first starting these first couple of stitches, I like to sort of like tighten everything up just so things aren't falling apart on me, okay? Let's do that again. Insert the needle, come up under that left needle, wrap the yarn around the bottom needle. Then we're going to take the needle and bring it back through, catching that loop and push it off, just like that, okay? And I like to just at first, just give things a tightening up. All right, we're gonna pick up speed, but let's do a few more slow ones together. Insert the needle into that next stitch, come up under that needle, wrap the yarn around the bottom needle. Then we're gonna kind of slide that needle back, catch that loop, see that loop there? And we're gonna push it off the edge, okay? So we're gonna go in, around, through, and push it off. In, around, bring it through, push it off. In, around, through, push it off. in, around, through, push it off. In, around, through, push it off. Okay, so you're just going to keep knitting all the way across. Okay, in, around, through, push it off, and so forth. Okay, now as you're learning how to knit, you're not going to worry about speed. Speed is something that comes with experience, and the more you knit, the more experience you'll get. So just keep knitting and knitting and knitting, and the speed will come later. For right now, you'll want to focus on accuracy. You'll want to slow down. You'll want to make sure that your yarn has nice tension as you're wrapping it around your needles. Okay, so we've come to the second to last stitch, and now we're here at the last stitch, and you'll just do the same thing. Okay, so you can set that needle down for a minute. It doesn't really look like much now, but we have a row in there. It's pretty small still. We were holding our yarn. If you notice, we passed the work. Now let me just zoom out a little bit so you can see a little bit more here. Now if you notice, we passed the work from our left hand, and now it's on our right needle. So to go to the next row, we're going to switch hands. So pass it back over to your left hand. One thing, over the years, I've taught lots of people how to knit. And a lot of times people see this loop here. They want to kind of come in through that. We want to make sure those are pointing down. Okay. And we just have our little loops on our needle. We're going to have those down here. See, they're down here. They're all lined up down here. But somehow those last few tend to want to swivel around. So just make sure they're all sort of pointing down, okay? And that way you're putting your needle in the same place each time. Okay, so we're going to grab a little bit more yarn off our yarn cake. Hasn't switched colors yet. And what we're going to do is we're just going to knit all these stitches, and you're just going to do that for pretty much the entire project till we get to the end, okay? So let's do one more row together. So we're going to take our needle and we're going to insert it into that first stitch. Grab your yarn however you like to hold it. Wrap it around that bottom needle, bring it back through, catching that loop, and push it off, okay? And we're just going to knit all of these rows as well, okay? I wanted to point out as a side note that you can find the full written pattern and the written instructions along with the supplies and the sizing and links to get the yarn and everything and all the supplies over at the Sparkle and Splatter blog. So be sure and check that out. The link is below for that. Okay, so as you can see, I'm going a little bit quicker than I did before because we did a slow motion earlier, but I'm just knitting all of these stitches as well. Also, another tip I wanted to point out is that when you're starting out with knitting, the first couple of rows you do, make sure that you still have the same number of stitches on your needle. If you have a different number of stitches on your needle, something has happened and you might need to correct it or start over. Okay, and here I am at the last stitch. And as you can see, we're starting to get, I'm just kind of like straightening it up so you can see it a little bit better. But as you can see, we're starting to get a little bit more length on our lovely scarf, okay? So what you'll want to do for the whole rest of your yarn cake is keep knitting all the rows. And then when we rejoin, I'm going to have a lot more length on my scarf, and I'm going to show you how to bind off, because once you're done knitting, we need to figure out how to get this off of our needles, okay? So continue with your knit stitches. If you need to back up the video, feel free to do that. If you need to, YouTube has a slow motion feature. You can do slow motion as well. There's a subtitle function. You can do that. And you can check out the written pattern over at the blog as well. So keep knitting all the rows, and when we rejoin, I'll show you how to bind off and get this off your needles and finish it up. Okay, we've made some beautiful progress on our scarf, and you'll want to save just a little bit of yarn left because now we're going to bind off. So we need to get all these stitches off of our needle, and that's really easy to do. So all you want to do to bind off, and let me just come in a little closer so you can see better, is we're going to knit the first stitch of the row, just like that. And then we're going to knit the next stitch of the row. Okay, so you'll have 2 stitches on your other needle. Then you're going to take your needle in your left hand, and you're going to take that loop, lift it up, over and off that other stitch, and off the needle, just like that. Okay, let's do that again. Knit the next stitch, Take your other needle, lift it up, over, and off the needle. Now, some people like to do that with their hands. They'll pick the loop up and bring it over. You can do that with your hands, the needle, whatever you feel most comfortable with, okay? So you're just going to do this all the way across. Knit the next stitch, lift that loop up, over, and off. Knit the next stitch, lift it up, over, and off. And as we're doing this, our scarf is starting to emerge from our needles, okay? So we're just doing this all the way across with all of our stitches, okay? Now let's pause for a moment because you can see back here. Now let's pause for a minute because you can see back here, we're starting to get an edge, okay? So let's go back to our work here and we're just going to keep doing this across. Lift it up, over, and off. Knit a stitch, lift it up, over, and off. Knit a stitch, lift it up, over, and off, and so forth, all the way across. Okay, we've continued, and now we just have a few stitches left. So knit that next stitch, lift it up, over, and off, and that very last stitch, we're going to knit it, and the same thing, lift it up, over, and off, okay? So now we have just one active stitch left on our needle. You can see we have a nice little edge. Our scarf is almost done. So what we want to do now is we want to cut the yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail. So this is about, in case you're wondering, about 8 to 12 inches, not very long. And then what we're going to do is carefully loosen up the stitch here. And what I like to do is sort of pinch it so it won't fall through, because this is the last active stitch. So if it falls through, your scarf could become unraveled. So slide your needle carefully out. Then we're just going to take our tail and we're going to send it through this loop, just like that. And then you're just going to kind of, see, I'm just sort of like pushing that knot down. You just want to tighten it up a little bit, okay? And secure it. All right, so straighten that out. And then our scarf is just about done. We have one more thing to do. We're going to grab our yarn needle. And if you did a yarn cake like me, you'll have just 2 tails. If you did your own color striping, you may have more tails. But any tails you have left, let's spin this around and we're going to weave these in, okay? So just grab your needle and you're just going to thread your tail into that needle. And then you're just going to take your needle and you're going to weave it in. And I like to go in one direction with this, with my tail. And just as a side note, this is reversible. See how it looks the same on both sides? So as you're sending your needle through here, as it's traveling through your work, you want it to stay in between those yarn plies, okay? You don't want it to show on either side. All right, so pull it through. And then what I like to do, because this is something you're going to be wearing, so it's going to have lots of movement, I like to take it and go in the other direction with my tail as well. And that will just help lock that tail into place, okay? All right, then take your scissors and give it a snip. And then you'll just repeat for your other tails. Okay, now our scarf is totally done and it's ready to wear. So that is how you knit an absolute beginner scarf. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Sparkle and Splatter video updates. Thanks again, everyone.